Steve Forbes is chairman and editor-in-chief of Forbes Media, one of the most respected financial outlets in the whole world. He's also the author and co-author of several books, including his latest, this one. And it couldn't have come at a more appropriate time. The title, Inflation: What It Is, Why It's Bad, and most importantly, how to fix it. Steve Forbes is with us tonight to answer all those questions and more. Please welcome to the show for the very first time, Steve Forbes. Steve, it's great having you here.
Good to be here.
I can't imagine that you were such a prophet that you could see into the future and know that when you wrote this book, America would be right in the middle of inflation, but here we are.
Here we are. I'd like to say it was sheer genius, but my wife tells me it's not so. 51 years. But it was clear over a year ago, Governor, that things were being done that were going to make real problems in the future. One is, even though the COVID crisis was beginning to abate, beginning to move back, the Federal Reserve, our central bank, was creating money, $120 billion a month. And it's amazing how they do it. You know, what they do is they call up a bond dealer and say, give us $1 billion of government bonds. And what they do is, so the dealer says, okay, I'll give you the bonds, and the Fed pays for it by crediting the dealer's bank account. Where do they get the money? Out of thin air. Wouldn't you love at the end of the month to have your checking account replenished for whatever you spend? But that's what the Federal Reserve did, $120 billion a month. And then the Biden administration, you know, when you have a lockdown, you disrupt supply chains, things become short, prices go up. You know, when we recovered from World War II, it took 2 years to recover, get our economy back in a peacetime way, going from tanks to refrigerators. But the Biden administration, as you alluded to earlier, has been putting barriers up. So there are two kinds of inflation. Monetary inflation, the Fed creating too much money out of thin air, and the non-monetary kind, where you have disruptions. Usually those will work themselves out, but this administration's been going out of its way to be disruptive on energy, on freight, on regulations. You know, they talk about, oh, we love infrastructure. And then they put in rules so you can't build highways and repair bridges. I mean, it's insane. They say one thing and then do the exact opposite.
But I want to talk about how inflation hits the American family real hard, because if there's an inflation, they really have less spendable money. Even though it may say $100, it's not worth $100 then, is it?
No, it isn't. You know, money just makes it easier for us to buy and sell with each other billions of times a day around the world, and we trust that I can get something from you, and I can use that money to get something else. You don't have to worry about it going down in value. When you buy a gallon of gasoline each day, you don't have to worry about, is it the same size as it was yesterday? Yeah. You buy a pound of cheese, it's 16 ounces. That doesn't float each day. Imagine the Federal Reserve is in charge of the Time Bureau. 60 minutes an hour one day, 48 minutes the next, 96 minutes the day after. Be chaos. So when you change the value of money, which is simply a measure of value, you not only disrupt families, you not only disrupt commerce, which is how people have a chance to get ahead in life, but also what we call in the book social trust. I don't have to know you. I don't have to know anyone in your audience. But through money, if we trust it, like we used to trust the US dollar, we can do all kinds of commercial transactions with each other, make school arrangements and things like that. But when you undermine the value of money, then trust goes down. You know, Germany, after World War I, was the most law-abiding nation on earth. Then came the great hyperinflation, which made possible the rise of Adolf Hitler. They're printing money all the time. They went to lawlessness because you were a sucker if you obeyed the rules, because you tried to work hard. No, speculation was the way you got ahead. Cheating was the way you got ahead. So the whole society collapsed. We saw the consequences. You see it today in Venezuela and elsewhere. Now, in this country, we've been going through a slow motion version of it. When we went off the gold standard, which we had for 180 years from George Washington right up to the 1970s. No, we've had ups and downs since then. But do you realize, I hate to throw out a number on a nice show like this, but when we were on the gold standard after World War II, we averaged over 4% growth a year. Since then, we've gone down because of the lack of trust in the dollar, 2.7. And you say, that doesn't sound like much, but do that over a 50-year period. This is an important number. Today, household income, median income is $67,000 when you take the whole country. If we had maintained the average growth rate that we did for nearly 200 years when we had a sound dollar, that average house, that median household income today would be $100,000 to $110,000. Now, don't you think life would be better if your income was $20,000, $30,000, $40,000? That's the cost of when politicians play with money.
And I want to be fair. Republicans were also
bipartisan.
Richard Nixon was the one who took us off the gold standard. So it's not that we can blame Democrats for everything historically. But right now, Joe Biden's policies seem to be exacerbating. His press secretary just the other day once again says the reason gasoline prices are all expensive and grocery prices, it's all Putin's fault. It's Putin's price hikes. Now, that just doesn't seem reasonable to most Americans.
And that, again, undermines the trust. One of the things we point out is when this kind of inflation rises up, they always blame scapegoats. In Roman times, they blamed Christians. In medieval times, they blamed witches. In Germany in the early 20s, when they had that terrible hyperinflation, they blamed Jewish merchants and bankers. President Nixon blamed oil producers. Joe Biden blames oil producers, meat producers, Vladimir Putin, drug makers, you and me, everyone. We're all at fault except him.
But he has the capacity to at least make better decisions.
Oh, yes.
but I don't understand, why doesn't he recognize? Surely he's got some economist around him who says, Mr. President, inflation is really hurting the American family at every level. Why don't you do these things differently? So why doesn't he?
One, the far left won't let him. I mean, he's had members of his party, like Larry Summers, former Treasury Secretary under Bill Clinton, and others telling him this is bad, warning him over a year ago where this was going to lead. They ignored it. And that's why this election's so important. The left is just going, far left is just going all out. They think maybe they'll lose an election, but if they do enough regulations, make enough changes, they can irretrievably make the country socialist. It's not going to work, but that's why this is so bad. And it's why not just economics, it eats away at the whole fabric of society every time the governments do something like this.
You know, Steve, one of the things you said that really strikes me is that there is a breakdown in the social order when there's a breakdown in the economic order. Exactly. And I don't think a lot of people see the correlation. They say, oh, yeah, it's just an economic issue. But we're talking about crime goes up, fraud goes up. People start cheating, not just, you know, the thieves on the subway, but we're talking about white-collar crime, people cheating their way to prosperity because they don't believe the system will work anymore.
Well, it undermines faith in the honesty of the system, that if you're honest, you obey the rules, you go by the guardrails, that you can move ahead and society moves ahead and you have an ordered society. When you undermine the money, it undermines the economy, and you don't understand why it's happening. And so it undermines what we call that social trust. And so and countries that routinely undermine their currency are far more violent than those that don't. It's all about trust. And it makes it easier. When you have sound money, we can trust each other. We don't have to know each other, but we can trust each other to do things together. When you don't have that faith, then faith in other things get undermined as well. It can be fast, like happened in Germany, or slow motion, which is what we've had in this country.
You know, that makes more sense than anything I've heard, which is one of the reasons I always love visiting with you. I love reading the things you write. This book couldn't be more perfect in timing for every American to understand what's happening to us. And I hope that people will get a copy of Inflation, what it is, why it's bad, and how to fix it. Steve Forbes, so good to have you here. And I want to make sure that all of you go to Huckabee.tv. You'll learn more about Steve. We have a direct link to the book and to Steve and all of his writings. And of course, great reporting and analysis from Forbes Media.